Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. And I am thrilled. You know it's Sunday when this guy is with us, the one and only, the immortal one from Men's Journal, the great Matt Hladik. Matt, good to have you back, buddy.
Always a pleasure, and I'm glad to be back on with you guys.
It is. It just seems like yesterday when we did a podcast and the season was over.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're 2 days away from training camp. Unbelievable. We got a lot to talk about, and we're going to get through and do a lot of predictions. We're going to finish the NFC today. But before we get there, I want to talk about there's a breath of fresh air in the desert.
Mm-hmm.
Pete Carroll has been that breath of fresh air. I didn't know Pete per se going into this, knew of him. We had a lot of mutual friends. I had friends that coached for him and with him, guys that played for him. I knew a lot about him, and everything I heard is true and more. He is, I've shared this with you privately, one of the Raiders players told me the most genuine human he'd ever met. I'll tell you a quick story. He introduces himself to a Raider player like the player didn't know who he was. And, you know, they just start chit-chatting. The player, he asks him about his family, shares a small detail about his family. I don't remember if it was a grandma, a kid, a cousin, a sister. It was something. It was just something immaterial. But 4 weeks later, because of the offseason, the way it works, he sees Pete Carroll, and Pete calls his name, goes over to him and asks him about this insignificant detail about his life. And it just genuinely shocked the player. You know, he goes, I'm not Max. I never expected him to remember that about me. And he has a way of just making everybody in the room feel completely important and valuable, which they are. And he's just been a breath of fresh air to a Raiders organization that, quite frankly, needed to take some bleach to its gene pool and clean up the last 20 years. Your thoughts on Pete Carroll?
Sure, certainly. I think that, we've talked about it a lot on here about the need for the Raiders to kind of shed that label of, kind of dysfunction and losing and really get some type of foundation built and a direction going. I think hiring a Pete Carroll does that for you. I think he's somebody who's proven at the NFL level. He's won everywhere he's been. He ran one of the best organizations, one of the best teams in the NFL for a long time with Seattle. So I think bringing him in gives you that instant sense of gravitas with, hiring a coach of his caliber. And I think that, he's very comfortable in who he is. And I think he knows his way is effective and it works. So I think when you have that set up, it allows you to be, free in a sense like that and to, be that guy who is able to connect with players and is able to, have that type of an impact day to day.
And fascinating. All right. You ready to go around and finish the NFL? Let's start in the NFC North division. I think the Lions win it. I think the Packers are coming, though. I love the Pack. I have a lot of like for Minnesota. I'm a huge fan of J.J. McCarthy. I don't believe in the Bears at all. I don't believe in Caleb Williams at all. Where am I wrong in the NFC North?
Well, I think when you look at the, for a true reason, the Lions are the favorites again. They should be. They were the best team in the NFC for the 2024 regular season. They were the number one seed for a reason. Injuries just kind of did them in, and they ran into a team that got hot and a quarterback that was playing out of his mind, Jaden Daniels. So I have no problem making them the favorites. I would probably lean towards them winning it again, but the Packers are right there for me. I think with Minnesota, we see some regression just because I don't think this is going to be a 13-14 win team this year. I think they got a lot of things kind of broke that way for them. I think they'll be good. I think they'll be in the running for a playoff spot. And I think the Bears are improved. But I like the hire they made with Ben Johnson. I think that was the right hire if you're trying to maximize Caleb Williams. But I need to see proof of concept with the Bears before, I'm ready to think of them as a playoff team and as a contender. I'm not ready to say they're going to go and basically almost double their win total and be in the playoffs this year. I think they'll be better. I think you'll see the progress, but I need to see more before I really believe in them.
Matt, even before he picked the Bears when he was still in it with the Raiders, I had people telling me, and I reported this, that they thought Ben Johnson was Josh McDaniels 2.0. Tremendous offensive mind, but not a guy who's gifted at dealing with people from the big dog role. Nobody disliked him like Josh. Everybody liked him. So it wasn't anybody that had an agenda. It was just their opinion. Is there a rookie coach in this league under more pressure than him when you look at the money he got paid, expectations, and everything else? To me, I don't think there's a new coach with anywhere near the amount of pressure as that guy.
Just thinking around the rest of the league, and I guess the only other options I think you have besides Ben Johnson would be either Ryan Schottenheimer, because nobody really understood that hire, and the Cowboys are the Cowboys. So I think you could make a case for him. And I think you can make a case for Mike Vrabel, even though their Patriots are all about him. The fact that he's kind of viewed as like this almost franchise savior a little bit, trying to recapture the glory there. And they have a young franchise quarterback who looks good in Drake May they have to maximize. So I think those are the only two guys that I would feel comfortable putting near a Ben Johnson, because Liam Cohen, he's been handed the Jags are going to be, I think, a little patient with him, even though, they want to see some improvement with Trevor Lawrence, and they hired him for his offensive capabilities. And then Pete Carroll, the Raiders situation, they're looking for him to build something there. They're not expecting him to be, a miracle worker overnight. They're looking for him to get something sustainable. And I think the same thing is true with Kellen Moore with the Saints and Aaron Glenn with the Jets. So I think the only other options besides Ben Johnson would be Schottenheimer and Vrabel. And that's a long way of saying that I would say he probably has the most pressure on him out of all the first-year coaches, because he took this job. It was basically his job that he handpicked. He got the number 1 overall pick from 2024, who, listen, people love Caleb Williams' ability. He has a lot of it. But the question is, will somebody be able to maximize him? Can he kind of put it together? Because you saw the flashes last year, but there were also some issues that left you a little bit of pause. Ben Johnson also has to, in addition to getting the most out of Caleb Williams, because if you don't get the most out of Caleb Williams, then after 2 years, people are wondering, what is Caleb Williams? Is he, actually the guy? In addition to that, Ben Johnson has to kind of break the curse of the Bears of being a bad offensive organization. They have not had a good offense, especially from a passing game perspective, in a long time. They're looked at as a place where quarterbacks and offensive coaches kind of go to die, and he's going to have to change that.
I'm going to tell you, I don't think Brian Schottenheimer personally feels the pressure like Ben. I think the organization does. They're in dangerous territory of apathy seeping in on their fan base if Jerry doesn't get this fixed. And with Vrabel, they're so bad. Same with the Raiders. I think there's a little bit more breathing room. But I totally agree with your argument there. Let's go to the NFC South. I got Tampa Bay winning it, and I got the ATL coming in second. And the only reason I have them coming in second is I got Carolina third, New Orleans fourth. And I think Carolina and New Orleans completely suck. I think Atlanta is not a good team, but because there's Carolina and NOLA in the same division, I think this is all Tampa Bay, and I think they're the only ones to even come close to a playoff berth out of it because they'll win that division. Love your thoughts on the NFC South.
I feel pretty confident, really confident, I might say, putting Tampa Bay 1 and putting New Orleans 4 right now. That 2-3 spot, I think I would give the advantage to Atlanta. But Carolina intrigues me because I don't think Atlanta's a great team. And if Carolina's improvement that they showed a little late last season, especially with Bryce Young, is for real, they could be the second best team in that division. I don't think they can win it. I still think they're behind Tampa Bay, unless there's some injuries or some fluky things happen. I think Tampa Bay is still the team to beat there. But Carolina intrigues me. I could see them finishing second in that division.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. All right, then we come to the NFC West. To me, I think the Rams are a very much a potential Super Bowl team. I think it's them and Philly. And I think if I'm Philly, the one team I don't want to match within the playoffs is the Rams. I think that is a terrible matchup for Philly. I think Philly's a great football team. But it's like Izzo talks about with the NCAA tournament, it's all about matchups. I don't think the Rams match up well with Philly. But I have the Rams winning the West. I have San Francisco coming in second, but I think they're both playoff teams and double-digit winners. I got Seattle coming in third. I don't think they're a great team. I don't understand letting Geno go and going in the direction they went. It makes no sense to me. And Arizona's just, they've got a lot of young weapons. I just think that is such a fundamentally flawed franchise. The franchise has to prove it can get it together. I think there's enough talent there to be better than Seattle. It's just a flawed franchise. Where am I wrong on the NFC West? Because I could see San Francisco or the Rams. I could see the Rams beating the Eagles in the playoffs. I could see San Francisco getting to the Super Bowl if they didn't have to face Philly. But there's two really good teams right there. I'd love your thoughts.
You know what? I'm thinking back right now, and I picked the Eagles to repeat in the East. Picked Detroit in the North. I almost said Central, going way back. And I picked Tampa Bay again in the South. I feel like I have to pick a different division winner in one of these NFC divisions. So I'm going to say San Francisco bounces back and wins the West. But I think San Francisco and the Rams are both playoff teams. The Seahawks are weird because when you think they're going to be very bad, they end up being okay. They're in the mix. They're hanging around. They almost made the playoffs last year, even though they didn't come in with the highest expectations. But I need to see another season out of Sam Darnold, especially not with the head coach in Minnesota, Kevin O'Connell. I just completely blanked on his name for a second. Without Kevin O'Connell, I need to see Sam Darnold and see if he can duplicate it before I really believe in them. Number one. Number two, I just think Geno Smith was a really solid player. I don't think he got the credit that he deserved playing in Seattle. I think we talked about this maybe the last show or a couple shows ago. I think people still kind of look at Geno as it's Geno from 10 years ago with the Jets. And I think people still kind of carry, how his career started and the teammate punching him and not being a good player with the Jets. And I think people, or even, the backlash he received for being the guy that broke Eli Manning's streak with the Giants. I think people don't realize he's been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL the last several years. And, is he top 5 with, your Lamars and your Burrows and guys like that and Mahomes, Josh Allen? No, but he's top 10 to 12. So I think when you lose him and you lose, and you're replacing Sam Darnold, who I want to see another season of before I really believe in him. I think that, not to mention no DK Metcalf, it's going to be interesting. And it's going to be, to me, I think they'll take a little bit of a step back. Arizona is a wild card because Arizona has talent. Kyler Murray's an exciting player. I could see them hanging in the playoff race and being a wild card team, or I could see them, losing 11 games, So either wouldn't surprise me.
All right. I've got some email for you. Okay. First one comes from Carl S. Carl S. Excuse me. Carl says, Hondo, tell Matt I've loved his switch to Men's Journal. I think it's really cool. I used to be a subscriber to the magazine years ago, but now that it's digital, I didn't even know it exists. Tell him I think he does a really, really good job. Will he be doing any more sports there than he does? He does some, but not a lot. Will he be doing more?
It's a great question. I think some of it will depend on, I think one of the things that we do best there and does best for us is the things that are happening in the moment. Whether, like this weekend, the Open Championship in golf, or with the NBA draft a few weeks ago, or things like that, covering things that happen in the moment. And I think that as we get to football season, there'll be more things to write about in the moment, big stories. So I think you might see me do a little bit more sports related stuff in the future. It'll still be a mix of pop culture and a mix of food and a mix of everything else, but you could see the room for a little bit extra sports content in there.
Then the next one I thought you would like, this is where it comes from, V Simpson. V is just an initial V. Hondo, I have loved reading Men's Journal now that Matt's there. Had never heard of it, let alone anything about it. Now I read it every day. It's great stuff. I want you to ask Matt. If you want to ask him off air, that's fine, and just send me an answer. But I didn't like that the Spun had become so much political. I don't like that. I like sports and whatever. Men's Journal doesn't seem to go down the same road. Can you ask him, will they try to keep Men's Journal more about men's stuff the way it is and less about politics? I really feel like, especially since he's left, the Spun has been politics and sports, not sports and pop culture. Please tell him he does a great job, and I read every single thing he writes. He's the best. V Simpson in Fresno, California.
Well, thank you, V. I appreciate the shout out. I kind of go by whatever our guidelines are at Men's Journal. I think that they, if there's an angle that can't really be avoided, that's where politics is involved or something like that, then I think it'll be writing about. But I do think they've tried to avoid kind of the ancillary stories that are, maybe political in nature or social issues in nature. So I would say probably you'll see me kind of doing the same type of thing where I'm just kind of keeping it, the way they want it to be and moving forward.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Remember, you can find me on Threads and IG at Hondo SR, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Hondo Carpenter. And as always, SI.com/NFL/Raiders. We're doing 20 stories a day minimum, cranking out the video, all of your best training camp coverage, and nobody does it as good as we do. Matt, tell them where to find you, both on your website and your social media.
Sure, you can find me at Men's Journal, Matt Haladik. You can just look up my name and search on the website or Google it, my name in conjunction with Men's Journal, and you'll find my stuff. You can find me on Twitter at MATTHLADIK919, and I'm always on there. Usually I'm tweeting mostly about, just sports stuff or just funny things there, but I'm always down to interact with some people and have fun.
All right, buddy. That's the great Matt Haladik. We'll see you all tomorrow.